Maya was just finishing her evening shift at the city hospital when her phone buzzed. It was almost midnight, and she was looking forward to going home and getting some rest. She had been working as a nurse for 3 years now, and while she loved helping people, the long hours were starting to wear her down. The call was from her younger sister's roommate, and the panic in her voice made Maya's heart skip a beat. "Maya, you need to get to the hospital right now. Something's wrong with Priya. She just collapsed, and the doctors are running tests." Maya's hands were shaking as she grabbed her keys and rushed to the emergency room. Priya was only 22 years old, healthy, and full of life. She was studying to become a teacher and had always been the energetic one in their family. The thought of something serious happening to her little sister made Maya feel sick. When she arrived at the hospital, she found Priya lying in a hospital bed. Looking pale and confused, several doctors were standing around her bed, discussing something. In hushed tones, Maya recognized one of them, Dr. Johnson, who had worked with her on several cases. "What's happening to her?" Maya asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Dr. Johnson pulled her aside and explained that Priya had been found unconscious in her dorm room. Her roommate had tried to wake her up for almost 10 minutes before calling for help. The initial tests showed that her oxygen levels had dropped dangerously low while she was sleeping. Over the next few hours, Maya watched as the medical team ran test after test. They checked Priya's heart, her lungs, her brain activity. Everything seemed normal when she was awake, but something strange was happening when she tried to sleep. "We think she has developed a rare condition," Dr. Johnson finally explained to Maya. "It's called nocturnal hypoventilation syndrome. Basically, her brain isn't sending the right signals to her breathing muscles when she sleeps. Without proper monitoring, she could stop breathing entirely during the night." Maya felt the world spinning around her. "What does that mean? Can you fix it?" "We're going to try different treatments, but for now, she needs someone to watch her every night, someone who knows what to look for and can help her if her breathing becomes irregular. Since you're a nurse, you would be the ideal person to monitor her." Maya looked at her sister, who was trying to stay awake even though she was clearly exhausted. The machines around her bed were beeping quietly, monitoring her every breath. The reality of the situation hit her like a truck. "Every night?" Maya asked. "Every single night, at least until we can find a better solution. I know it sounds overwhelming, but without constant supervision, this condition can be life-threatening." Maya's mind raced. She worked 12-hour shifts at the hospital. How could she possibly stay awake all night and then work all day? But looking at Priya's frightened face, she knew there was no choice to make. "I'll do it," she said without hesitation. The next few days were a blur of activity. Maya moved into Priya's small apartment, transforming the living room into a medical monitoring station. She bought monitors, oxygen equipment, and emergency supplies. The insurance company was giving them trouble about covering a professional night nurse, and their parents lived in another country, making it impossible for them to help. Maya learned everything she could about Priya's condition. She studied the warning signs, practiced using the equipment, and created a detailed plan for different emergency scenarios. The responsibility was enormous, but she was determined to keep her sister safe. The first night was terrifying. Maya sat in a chair next to Priya's bed, watching the monitors and listening to every breath. Around 2 in the morning, she noticed that Priya's breathing was becoming shallow and irregular. The oxygen monitor started beeping softly, warning that her levels were dropping. Maya gently adjusted Priya's position and used a manual breathing device to help her get more oxygen. Within a few minutes, Priya's breathing returned to normal, but Maya's heart was still racing. This was going to be her life now, every single night. As the weeks passed, Maya developed a routine. She would work her hospital shift during the day, come home exhausted, grab a quick dinner, and then settle in for the night watch. She learned to recognize the subtle changes in Priya's breathing patterns. The way her skin color would change slightly when her oxygen levels dropped, and exactly when to intervene. The hardest part wasn't the physical exhaustion, though that was brutal. It was the emotional weight of knowing that her sister's life depended entirely on her staying alert and focused. One mistake, one moment of falling asleep, and Priya could be in serious danger. Maya had to give up her social life completely. She couldn't go out with friends, couldn't date, couldn't even visit other family members. Her world had shrunk to just her job and taking care of Priya. Her colleagues at the hospital started noticing that she was always tired, but she couldn't explain the full situation. Without violating Priya's privacy, Priya felt terrible about the situation. She could see how exhausted Maya was becoming, and she knew that her sister was sacrificing everything to keep her alive. They tried to find alternatives, but every night nurse they contacted either didn't have experience with this rare condition or was too expensive for them to afford. The isolation was the worst part. Maya had always been social and outgoing, but now she spent most of her time alone with Priya and the medical equipment. She started to feel like she was losing herself in the role of caregiver, but she couldn't see any other way forward. Despite all the challenges, Maya never once considered giving up. Looking at Priya's face every morning, knowing that her sister was alive because of her dedication, gave her the strength to keep going. She just hoped that someday they would find a better solution. 1 month into their new routine, Maya felt like she was living in a nightmare that never ended. Her body was running on fumes, surviving on just 2 or 3 hours of sleep each day. The constant exhaustion was making everything harder, from simple tasks like making coffee to complex medical procedures at work. Every morning, Maya would drag herself out of the chair where she had spent the night monitoring Priya. Her back ached from sitting in uncomfortable positions, her eyes burned from staring at monitors all night, and her head felt foggy from lack of proper rest. But she had to get ready for work because they needed her hospital income now more than ever. At the hospital, Maya tried her best to hide how tired she was. She would splash cold water on her face, drink extra coffee, and force herself to stay focused during her 12-hour shifts. But her colleagues started noticing that something was wrong. She would zone out during meetings, take longer to complete routine tasks, and sometimes forget small details that she normally never missed. Her supervisor, Mrs. Chen, pulled her aside one afternoon. "Maya, is everything okay at home? You seem exhausted lately, and I'm worried about you." Maya wanted to explain everything, but she couldn't bring herself to share Priya's private medical information. "I'm just dealing with some family stuff," she said quietly. "I'll be fine." But Maya wasn't fine, and she knew it. The lack of sleep was affecting her judgment, and in a hospital setting, that could be dangerous for patients. She started making small mistakes, nothing serious yet, but enough to worry her. She would double-check everything 3 times, constantly afraid that her exhaustion might cause her to hurt someone. The nights were becoming more challenging too. Maya had learned to recognize the warning signs of Priya's breathing problems, but each episode was still terrifying. Around midnight, she would notice Priya's chest rising and falling in an irregular pattern. The oxygen monitor would start beeping, and Maya would have to act quickly. She developed a system of gentle interventions. First, she would carefully adjust Priya's sleeping position, sometimes lifting her head slightly or turning her to one side. If that didn't work, she would use the manual breathing device, helping Priya get more oxygen into her lungs. In severe cases, she would have to wake Priya completely, gently shaking her shoulder until her breathing returned to normal. The worst part was that these episodes were becoming more frequent. What started as once or twice a night had increased to 4 or 5 times. Maya barely had time to close her eyes between emergencies. She would sit in her chair, fighting to stay awake, knowing that falling asleep could mean losing her sister. Priya was struggling too, but in a different way. She could see what this was doing to Maya, and the guilt was eating her alive. Every morning, she would wake up to find her sister looking exhausted and defeated. She knew that Maya was giving up everything to keep her alive, and she felt like a burden. "Maybe we should try to find a night nurse again," Priya suggested one evening. "I know it's expensive, but there has to be someone who can help." Maya had already called dozens of nursing agencies. The few nurses who had experience with respiratory conditions were either unavailable or charged rates they couldn't afford. Their insurance company kept denying coverage, claiming that home monitoring wasn't medically necessary despite the doctor's recommendations. The isolation was becoming unbearable for both sisters. Maya had to cancel plans with friends so many times that they eventually stopped inviting her out. Her phone would ring with invitations to birthday parties, movie nights, or weekend trips, and she would have to decline every single one. Her friend Lisa called one evening, concerned. "Maya, we never see you anymore. What's going on? Are you okay?" Maya felt tears welling up in her eyes. "I'm sorry, Lisa. I'm just going through a really difficult time right now. I can't really explain it, but I can't leave the house at night." "Can't leave the house? Maya, that doesn't sound healthy. Are you in some kind of trouble?" Maya wanted to tell her everything, but she was too tired to explain the complicated situation. "I'm not in trouble. I'm just taking care of family right now. I'll call you when things get better." But when would things get better? Maya couldn't see an end to this situation. Every night felt like it could be the night something went wrong. Every morning, she was grateful that Priya was still alive. But she was also terrified about facing another day of exhaustion. The physical toll was obvious. Maya had lost weight because she barely had time to eat proper meals. Her skin looked pale and tired, and she had dark circles under her eyes that no amount of makeup could hide. She would catch glimpses of herself in mirrors at the hospital and hardly recognize the person looking back at her. Priya was dealing with her own challenges. The medication she was taking made her feel drowsy during the day, but she was afraid to sleep too deeply at night. She would lie in bed, trying to stay partially awake, worried that her breathing would stop and Maya wouldn't notice in time. The sisters tried to stay positive, but the stress was affecting their relationship. They would snap at each other over small things, then immediately apologize, both knowing that the situation was making them say things they didn't mean. One particularly bad night, Priya had 6 breathing episodes. Maya barely managed to help her through each one, and by morning, both sisters were emotionally drained. They sat in the kitchen, drinking coffee and staring at each other, both wondering how much longer they could continue like this. "We need to find another solution," Maya said finally. "This isn't sustainable for either of us." Priya nodded, but they both knew that finding alternatives wasn't easy. They were trapped in a situation that seemed impossible to escape, held together only by Maya's determination to keep her sister alive and Priya's will to survive. 3 months into their difficult journey, Maya realized that something had to change. She was standing in the hospital bathroom, splashing cold water on her face. When she caught her reflection in the mirror, the person staring back at her looked like a stranger, pale, exhausted, and defeated. In that moment, she made a decision that would change everything. "I can't keep going like this," she whispered to herself. "If I break down, Priya won't survive. I need to find a better way." That evening, instead of just sitting by Priya's bed feeling helpless, Maya opened her laptop and started researching. She spent hours reading medical journals, patient forums, and support group websites. She discovered that they weren't alone in this struggle. There were other families dealing with similar rare conditions, and many of them had found creative solutions. Maya found an online support group called Night Warriors, Caregivers, who stayed awake to monitor loved ones with breathing disorders. Reading their stories made her feel less isolated. These people understood exactly what she was going through. They shared tips, offered emotional support, and most importantly, they gave her hope that things could get better. One woman named Patricia had been caring for her husband with a similar condition for 2 years. She had developed a system of strategic napping that allowed her to function better during the day. "You have to take care of yourself first," Patricia wrote in a message to Maya. "If you collapse, who's going to take care of your sister?" Maya started implementing small changes immediately. She learned to take 15-minute power naps during her lunch breaks at the hospital. She would find a quiet room, set an alarm, and force herself to rest even if she couldn't fall asleep completely. These brief moments of rest made a huge difference in her energy levels. She also started being more honest with her colleagues. When her supervisor, Mrs. Chen, asked about her condition again, Maya decided to share some details. My sister has a rare breathing condition, and I have to monitor her every night. I'm doing my best to manage both responsibilities, but I wanted you to know in case it affects my work. Mrs. Chen was more understanding than Maya had expected. Why didn't you tell me sooner? We can adjust your schedule to help you manage this better. She arranged for Maya to have more flexibility with her shifts and connected her with other nurses who had experience caring for family members with medical conditions. Meanwhile, Priya was going through her own transformation, the guilt of watching her sister suffer had motivated her to take a more active role in finding solutions. She started researching her condition obsessively, looking for new treatments, clinical trials, and medical devices that might help. Look at this, Priya said one evening, showing Maya an article on her laptop. There's a new study being conducted at the university hospital. They're testing a device that can help people with breathing problems during sleep. Maya leaned over to read the article. The study was looking for participants with nocturnal hypoventilation syndrome, exactly what Priya had. The treatment involved a small device that could detect irregular breathing patterns and provide gentle stimulation to help maintain proper breathing during sleep. This could be our answer, Maya said, feeling hopeful for the first time in months. They immediately contacted the research team and scheduled an appointment. The process of getting Priya enrolled in the study took several weeks, but it gave both sisters something to focus on besides their daily struggle. During this time, Maya also discovered other resources she hadn't known existed. She found a local, nonprofit organization that provided temporary caregiving assistance for families dealing with rare medical conditions. They couldn't offer overnight care, but they could provide someone to watch Priya for a few hours in the evening, giving Maya time to rest or run errands. The organization also connected them with a social worker who helped them navigate the insurance system more effectively. Many families don't realize that there are different ways to get coverage approved. The social worker explained, "We just need to present your case from a different angle." Maya started keeping detailed records of Priya's condition, documenting every breathing episode, every intervention, and every medication change. This documentation became crucial evidence when they appealed their insurance denial for professional nursing care. The sisters also began having deeper conversations during those long nights. Without the distractions of normal life, they talked about things they had never discussed before. Priya shared her fears about being dependent on others, while Maya opened up about her own struggles with feeling responsible for everything. "I've been thinking about what this experience has taught me," Priya said one night. "Before this happened, I took everything for granted. Now I realize how precious each breath really is." Maya nodded, understanding exactly what her sister meant. "I've learned things about myself I never knew. I always thought I was strong, but I didn't know I could be this strong." Their relationship, which had been strained by the stress of their situation, began to grow stronger. They developed a new level of trust and understanding. Maya no longer felt like she was carrying the burden alone, and Priya no longer felt like a helpless victim. As they waited for news about the clinical trial, Maya continued to refine their nighttime routine. She created a more comfortable monitoring station, learned to recognize even subtler changes in Priya's breathing, and developed better emergency protocols. She was still exhausted, but she no longer felt hopeless. The breakthrough came when they received a call from the research team. Priya had been accepted into the clinical trial, and the procedure was scheduled for the following month. For the first time in months, both sisters allowed themselves to imagine a future where Maya could sleep through the night, and Priya could breathe without fear. "Whatever happens," Maya said as they prepared for bed that night, "we've made it this far. Together, we can handle anything." The morning of Priya's surgery, Maya woke up feeling something she hadn't experienced in months: hope. After 8 long months of staying awake every night, watching her sister struggle to breathe, today might finally be the day everything changed. The clinical trial device could be the answer they had been praying for. Maya helped Priya get ready for the hospital visit, and for the first time in ages, both sisters were smiling. They talked excitedly about what life would be like once the device was implanted. Maya imagined sleeping through an entire night, going out with friends again, maybe even taking a vacation. Priya dreamed of returning to her studies without the constant fear of not waking up. "I can't believe this nightmare might finally be over," Priya said as they drove to the hospital. "You'll be able to have your life back." Maya squeezed her sister's hand. "We'll both have our lives back." The surgery went perfectly. The doctors were optimistic about the results, and the device was functioning exactly as it should. For the first time in months, Maya felt like she could breathe freely. The medical team explained that the device would monitor Priya's breathing patterns and provide gentle stimulation whenever her breathing became irregular. That first night was magical. Maya set up her usual monitoring station, but the doctors had assured her that the device would handle everything. She watched the monitors nervously for the first few hours, but Priya's breathing remained steady and regular. Around midnight, Maya realized she was actually feeling sleepy, something that hadn't happened in months. She dozed off in her chair and woke up 6 hours later to find Priya breathing peacefully. The device had worked perfectly through the night. Maya felt tears of relief rolling down her cheeks after months of terror and exhaustion. They had finally found their solution. For 2 wonderful weeks, life felt normal again. Maya was able to sleep through the night, and she returned to work with renewed energy. Her colleagues noticed the difference immediately. She was more alert, more focused, and genuinely happy for the first time in months. Priya was also thriving, returning to her studies and making plans for the future. Maya even went out with friends for the first time in almost a year. Sitting in a restaurant, laughing and enjoying herself, she felt like a different person. She had forgotten what it felt like to be carefree, to not have the constant weight of responsibility on her shoulders. "You look so much better," her friend Lisa said over dinner. "I was really worried about you for a while there." Maya smiled, not ready to share the full story yet, but grateful to be reconnecting with her normal life. "Things are looking up," she said simply. But on the 14th night, Maya woke up to the sound of alarms. The monitors were beeping frantically, and Priya was struggling to breathe. Maya rushed to her side, using the manual breathing device to help her sister get oxygen. It took almost 20 minutes to stabilize Priya's breathing, and both sisters were shaken by the episode. The next morning, they rushed back to the hospital. The doctors ran a series of tests and delivered devastating news. Priya's body was rejecting the implanted device. Not only was it no longer working properly, but the rejection was actually making her condition worse than it had been before the surgery. "We need to remove the device immediately," Dr. Johnson explained. "The inflammation it's causing could be life-threatening." Maya felt like the ground was disappearing beneath her feet. "What does that mean? Will she be okay?" "We'll remove the device today, but I have to be honest with you. Her breathing problems may be more severe now than they were before. The inflammation has affected some of the surrounding tissue." The second surgery was successful in removing the device, but the recovery was much harder. Priya's breathing episodes became more frequent and more severe. Maya found herself back in the familiar chair beside her sister's bed. But now she was dealing with an even more fragile patient. The emotional impact was crushing. Both sisters had allowed themselves to hope, to imagine a normal future, only to have it snatched away. The disappointment was almost harder to bear than the original diagnosis had been. Priya fell into a deep depression. She felt guilty for getting their hopes up, for putting Maya through the stress of surgery, for making everything worse. She stopped talking about the future and barely participated in conversations about treatment options. "This is all my fault," she said one evening, tears streaming down her face. "If I hadn't pushed for the surgery, you wouldn't be going through this again. Maybe I should just accept that this is how things are going to be." Maya was struggling with her own emotions. She was angry at the medical system, frustrated with the setback, and terrified that she wasn't strong enough to handle the increased demands of caring for Priya. The breathing episodes were now happening 6 or 7 times a night, and Priya's recovery from each one was taking longer. The exhaustion returned with a vengeance. Maya felt like she was starting from scratch. But this time it was harder because she knew what she was losing. She had tasted normal life again, and going back to the constant vigilance felt almost impossible. Her colleagues at work noticed the change immediately. The energy and optimism that had returned during those 2 weeks disappeared, replaced by a deeper exhaustion than before. Maya made more mistakes, forgot important details, and struggled to concentrate on even simple tasks. Maybe we should consider other options, Maya suggested one evening. Though she didn't know what those options might be, there has to be something else we can try. But both sisters knew that they were running out of alternatives. The setback had shaken their confidence in medical solutions, and they were back to the daily struggle of just trying to survive one night at a time. 18 months after Priya's diagnosis, Maya sat in her familiar chair beside her sister's bed, watching the monitors glow softly in the darkness. But something had changed. The desperate fear that had consumed her for so long had transformed into something else, a quiet acceptance that surprised her. The months following the failed surgery had been the hardest of their lives. Both sisters had to rebuild their strength, not just physically, but emotionally. They had learned that hope could be dangerous when it was placed entirely in external solutions. But they had also discovered that strength could come from the most unexpected places. Maya had gradually come to realize that her role as Priya's protector had changed her in ways she never expected. At work, she found herself more patient with difficult patients, more understanding of families going through medical crises. She could spot the signs of caregiver exhaustion in other family members and knew exactly how to help them. "I never thought I'd say this," Maya told Priya one evening, "but taking care of you has made me a better nurse. I understand things now that I never understood before." Priya had been going through her own transformation. The depression that had followed the failed surgery had eventually lifted, replaced by a determination to find meaning in their situation. She started writing about her experience, not just for herself, but for other people who might be going through similar challenges. Her blog, Breathing Through the Night, became a resource for families dealing with rare medical conditions. She wrote about the practical aspects of home monitoring, the emotional toll on both patients and caregivers, and the small victories that kept them going. The response was overwhelming. Letters from families around the world who felt less alone. Because of her words, "I got another message today," Priya told Maya excitedly, a mother in Canada whose son has the same condition I do. She said my blog helped her realize she wasn't going crazy, that all the feelings she was having were normal. Maya smiled, proud of her sister's strength. "You're helping people understand what we've been going through." The sisters had also found a sustainable solution, though it wasn't the perfect fix they had originally hoped for. Through the nonprofit organization they had connected with, they found a specially trained nursing assistant who could cover 3 nights a week. Maya continued to monitor Priya on the other 4 nights, but the break made an enormous difference. The new medication regimen that Priya's doctors had developed was also helping. While it didn't eliminate her breathing problems entirely, it reduced the frequency and severity of episodes. Maya was still needed, but the constant crisis mode had finally ended. Maya was able to return to a more normal work schedule, and she even started dating again. She was upfront with potential partners about her caregiving responsibilities, and she was surprised to find that many people respected her dedication, rather than seeing it as a burden. "You're an amazing person," her new boyfriend Alex said after she explained her situation. Not many people would sacrifice so much for their family. Maya had learned to set boundaries that protected both her own well-being and her ability to care for Priya. She scheduled regular time for herself, maintained her friendships, and even took occasional short trips. When the nursing assistant could provide extended coverage, the relationship between the sisters had evolved into something deeper and stronger than either had imagined possible. The months of depending on each other completely had created a bond that went beyond typical sibling relationships. They knew each other's fears, strengths, and limits in ways that most people never experience. Do you ever regret it? Priya asked one evening. Giving up so much of your life for me. Maya considered the question seriously. I regret that you had to go through this illness. I regret that we both had to suffer so much. But I don't regret being here for you. I learned things about myself that I never would have discovered otherwise. Priya nodded, understanding. I learned that I'm stronger than I thought I was. And I learned what it really means to be loved unconditionally. The sisters had also become advocates for other families facing similar challenges. They worked with the nonprofit organization to develop better support systems, lobbied insurance companies for more comprehensive coverage, and spoke at medical conferences about the patient and caregiver experience. Their story had attracted attention from local media, and they used the platform to raise awareness about rare medical conditions and the need for better support systems. Maya discovered that she had a talent for public speaking, while Priya's writing continued to reach people around the world. We went through all of this for a reason, Priya said during one of their speaking engagements. If our experience can help other families feel less alone, then maybe it was worth it. Maya still sat beside Priya's bed most nights, but now she did it with a sense of purpose rather than desperation. She had books to read, correspondence to catch up on, and sometimes she would work on preparing for the next day's presentations. The nighttime hours had become productive time rather than just fearful waiting. The monitors still beeped occasionally, and Maya still had to help Priya through breathing episodes. But these interventions had become routine rather than traumatic. They had developed an efficient system that minimized disruption and maximized rest for both of them. Looking back, Maya realized that what had initially seemed like a tragedy that would destroy their lives had actually revealed capabilities and connections they never knew they possessed. She had learned that she was capable of extraordinary dedication, while Priya had discovered her voice as a writer and advocate. I'm not saying I'm grateful for your illness, Maya said one evening, as she settled into her familiar chair. But I'm grateful for who we've become because of it. Priya smiled, adjusting her pillows as she prepared for sleep. I'm grateful for you, for everything you've done, everything you continue to do. Maya watched her sister drift off to sleep, no longer with the constant terror of earlier months, but with a quiet confidence born from having faced the impossible and found a way to not just survive, but thrive. Their story wasn't the fairy tale ending they had originally hoped for, but it was something better, a real life built on genuine love, mutual support, and the knowledge that they could handle whatever challenges came their way.